November 10, 1944, 3:47 p.m. A Belgian farmer named Henri Dubois is plowing his field near Courroy-le-Château when he hears it, the deep, unmistakable drone of Wright Cyclone engines. He looks up and sees a B-17 flying fortress descending through broken clouds, landing gear down, flaps extended, flying the textbook approach pattern that American bombers use when returning to base. Except there's no American base here. This is occupied Belgium, German territory. And as the massive bomber passes overhead at maybe 300 feet, Dubois notices something that makes his blood run cold. The cockpit windows are dark, empty. Nobody's flying that aircraft. The B-17 continues its perfect approach, lines up with Dubois' wheat field like it's a runway, and touches down with the kind of gentle precision that experienced pilots spend years learning to master. The bomber rolls to a stop. Engines idle for maybe 30 seconds, then shut down one by one. Silence. Dubois stands frozen, staring at this impossible thing that just happened in front of him. An American bomber just landed itself in his field, with nobody aboard. 3 hours earlier, 12:47 hours, RAF Bassingbourn, England. Staff Sergeant Robert Navels is standing outside the operations briefing room, smoking his third cigarette of the morning and trying not to think about the mission. Navels is a ball turret gunner, 22 years old, from St.
Louis, and he's flown 18 missions over Germany, which means he's seen enough to know when something feels wrong. Today feels wrong. The briefing was a mess. Their regular mission commander, Major Harrison, is in hospital with pneumonia. The replacement commander, Captain Dennis Ward, just arrived from the States 2 weeks ago. Ward has exactly 3 combat missions under his belt. 3! And today he's leading a formation of 60 B-17s deep into Germany to hit synthetic oil refineries near Leipzig. The target briefing was confusing. Ward kept referring to alternate targets, backup plans, contingency routes. Too many options, too many decisions. Navels watched the experienced pilots exchange glances during the briefing, saw them trying to figure out if this new captain knew what he was doing. Nobody asked questions. You don't question your commanding officer, especially not in front of the whole squadron, but the uncertainty was thick enough to taste. Navels finishes his cigarette and heads to his B-17, tail number 4231563, nicknamed Maggie's Drawers after the red flag they wave at rifle ranges when you miss the target completely. Dark humor, but it's survived 16 missions, which makes it a lucky ship. The crew is already aboard. Pilot is First Lieutenant James Cooper, 24, from Texas. Solid pilot, keeps his head when things get bad. Co-pilot is Second Lieutenant Paul Morrison, 23, from Oregon. Navigator is Second Lieutenant William Chen. Bombardier is Second Lieutenant Frank Rodriguez. Engineer is Technical Sergeant Michael Tucker. Radio operator is Staff Sergeant Thomas Hayes. 2 waist gunners, tail gunner, and navels in the ball turret. 10 men total. Standard B-17 crew. At 13:15 hours, they taxi into position. 60 bombers forming up, climbing to altitude, heading east across the channel. Standard formation. Standard mission. Except nothing about today is going to be standard. 14:23 hours, somewhere over Belgium at 24,000 feet. The formation crosses the German border. Flak starts almost immediately. Black puffs exploding around them, shrapnel rattling against the fuselage. Navels is crammed into his ball turret underneath the aircraft, rotating his position to scan for fighters, trying not to think about the fact that he's hanging in a glass bubble with nothing between him and empty sky except a 1/4 inch of plexiglass. The intercom crackles. Captain Ward's voice, coming from the lead aircraft. All squadrons, this is lead. Weather's worse than forecast. Target area completely socked in. We're proceeding to alternate target Bravo. Navels doesn't know what alternate target Bravo is. Neither does most of the formation apparently, because the radio traffic suddenly gets confused. Different squadron leaders asking for clarification. Ward's voice again, sounding strained. Alternate target Bravo is the railroad yards at Kassel. All squadrons follow lead aircraft. Except half the formation doesn't follow. Some squadrons peel off toward what they think is Kassel. Others hold formation. Some turn back toward the primary target, hoping the weather clears. Within 5 minutes, the tight defensive formation they'd maintained since crossing the Channel has completely fallen apart. Individual squadrons scattered across 50 miles of German airspace. This is exactly what the Luftwaffe prays for. Isolated bombers, easy targets. Cooper's voice on the intercom, calm but tight. "Navigator, give me a heading to Kassel." Chen responds, "Pilot, I'm not sure which target we're actually hitting. Lead aircraft is turning northeast, but that's not the heading for Kassel." Ward's voice cuts in, sharp now, angry. "All aircraft maintain formation. I say again, maintain formation." Cooper makes a decision. We're following. Maggie's drawers turns northeast, along with maybe a dozen other bombers. The rest of the formation is gone, scattered, and the flak is getting heavier. 1441 hours. A German 88mm shell detonates maybe 20 yards off their right wing. Close enough that Navels feels the shockwave through the aircraft structure. Close enough that shrapnel punches through the fuselage. Warning lights flash on Cooper's instrument panel. Number 3 engine is losing oil pressure. Temperature climbing. He shuts it down, feathers the prop. 3 engines now. Still flyable, but their speed drops. They start falling behind the formation, which is when the fighters show up. 2 Focke-Wulf 190s coming in from 11 o'clock high. The top turret gunner opens fire. Tracers arc across the sky. The Focke-Wulfs break left, circle around, come back from 6 o'clock. The tail gunner is shooting. 1 Focke-Wulf breaks off, trailing smoke, but the second one keeps coming. 20mm cannon shells walking up the fuselage. The ball turret takes a hit. Navels feels the impact, hears metal tearing. His turret won't rotate anymore. He's stuck, hanging under the aircraft in a damaged turret, unable to defend himself. The Focke-Wulf makes another pass, more hits. Number 4 engine explodes. Fire. Cooper hits the fire suppression. The fire goes out, but the engine's dead. 2 engines now, both on the left wing. The B-17 starts yaw right. Cooper and Morrison both fighting the controls to keep her level. They're losing altitude, dropping out of formation. Alone now, and deep in German territory. 1456 hours. They're down to 18,000 feet and still dropping. Cooper's voice on intercom, measured but urgent. Pilot to crew, prepare to bail out. We're not making it back to England on 2 engines. We'll try to reach Belgium, find friendly territory, but be ready to jump on my command. Navels is trying to get out of the ball turret. It's jammed. The manual crank won't work. Tucker, the engineer, climbs down to help. They're both struggling with the mechanism while the aircraft continues losing altitude. 15,000 feet, 12,000. The intercom crackles. It's Captain Ward's voice, broadcasting to all remaining aircraft in the scattered formation. All aircraft, this is lead. If you cannot maintain formation altitude, bail out immediately. Do not attempt to return to England alone. That's an order. Bail out and evade. Cooper keys his mic. Lead, this is Maggie's draws. We've lost 2 engines, but we're still flying. Requesting permission to attempt return. Ward interrupts. Negative, Maggie's draws. You will not make the channel on 2 engines. Bail out now while you're over friendly territory. That is a direct order. Navels finally gets the ball turret cranked up, squeezes back into the fuselage. The whole crew is looking at Cooper, waiting for the decision. Cooper is staring at his instruments. Fuel gauges, engine temperatures, altitude, airspeed. He's doing the math in his head. Can they make it? Maybe, if everything goes perfect. If they don't lose another engine. If the weather holds. If German fighters don't find them again. Too many ifs. Morrison, the co-pilot, leans over. Jim, Ward gave a direct order. We bail out, we can evade, make it back to friendly lines.
We stay with the aircraft, we're dead if anything else goes wrong." Cooper doesn't respond immediately. He's thinking about something else. About all the times he's heard stories of crews who bailed out of perfectly flyable aircraft and ended up captured or killed during evasion. About the fact that they're at 12,000 feet with 2 good engines and this aircraft has brought them home from worse situations. About whether a captain with 3 combat missions really understands what a B-17 can survive. 15:03 hours. Cooper makes his decision. "Crew, this is pilot. We're bailing out. Ward's right. We won't make the channel. Everyone to bail out positions. Chen, give me our position." Chen checks his navigation charts. "We're approximately 40 miles southeast of Brussels, Belgium. German occupied, but there's resistance activity in this area." "Good. Everyone bail out. Chen, you go first, then bombardier, then waist gunners, then tail gunner, then radio operator. Tucker, you help Navels out the waist door. Morrison and I will go last." The crew moves into position. Chen opens the nosewheel doors, sits on the edge. "See you guys on the ground." He drops through. Rodriguez follows, then the waist gunners, then Hayes, the radio operator. Tucker helps Navels get his chute on. Ball turret gunners don't wear their chutes in the turret, no room, and guides him to the open waist door. Wind roaring through, the ground visible far below. Navels jumps. The silk parachute opens with a hard jerk. Navels is floating, descending toward Belgian farmland. He can see the other chutes scattered across the sky. 8 of them. Wait, 8. Should be 9. Chen, Rodriguez, both waist gunners, tail gunner, Hayes, Tucker, Navels. That's 8. Cooper and Morrison are still supposed to come after everyone else. Navels looks up. The B-17 is still flying, level flight. 2 engines running smoothly. But nobody's jumping. The aircraft continues on its heading, gradually climbing now that it's lighter. Navels watches it disappear into clouds to the northwest. Cooper and Morrison never jumped. 15:47 hours. Henri Dubois watches the B-17 land in his field. When the engine shut down, he waits. Maybe 5 minutes. Nothing happens. No crew exits the aircraft. Dubois cautiously approaches. Climbs up through the open waist door that the crew left open when they bailed out. The interior is empty. Parachute harnesses hanging where the crew shed them. Personal items scattered around. But no pilot, no co-pilot. The cockpit seats are empty. Controls are set for level flight. Fuel gauges read nearly empty. But the aircraft landed itself. Or somebody landed it and then vanished. Dubois doesn't understand. He climbs back down and runs to get the local resistance contact. November 11, 1944. The Belgian resistance gets word to Allied intelligence. An American B-17 landed itself near Courroy-le-Château, completely intact, no crew aboard. Allied intelligence is baffled. They send out urgent queries. Was this aircraft reported missing? Did the crew bail out? Eventually, they piece together what happened.
The crew of Maggie's drawers bailed out as ordered, all accounted for. Chen, Rodriguez, and 3 others captured by Germans. Navels, Tucker, and Hayes evaded, reached Allied lines. But Cooper and Morrison, nobody knows. They never bailed out. They never reached the aircraft that landed in Belgium. They simply disappeared. November 15, 1944. Staff Sergeant Robert Navels is debriefed by intelligence officers at RAF Bassingbourn. He tells them everything. The confused orders from Captain Ward, the decision to bail out, the fact that Cooper and Morrison stayed with the aircraft. The intelligence officer taking notes pauses. "Sergeant, you're certain the pilot and co-pilot were still aboard when you jumped?" "Yes, sir, absolutely certain. They said they'd jump last, after everyone else was out." "And you saw the aircraft continue flying after your chute opened?" "Yes, sir. It was still flying level, climbing even, heading northwest." The intelligence officer exchanges glances with his colleague. "Sergeant, that aircraft landed in Belgium 83 miles from where your crew bailed out. It flew for approximately 24 minutes after you jumped, with perfect navigation, and executed a landing that experienced pilots would be proud of. But the aircraft was empty when resistance fighters reached it." Navels doesn't know what to say. The intelligence officer continues. We're trying to understand what happened. Is it possible Cooper and Morrison bailed out after you, and the aircraft just happened to fly itself to Belgium and land through some mechanical accident? Sir, no. I watched that aircraft. It was climbing. It was under control. And even if they bailed out, how does a B-17 with 2 engines on one wing maintain level flight for 24 minutes and then execute a perfect landing in a field? That's impossible. Yes, Sergeant, that's what we're trying to understand, because it is impossible, but it happened. The investigation continues for weeks. Search teams scour the area where Navels says he last saw the aircraft, looking for any sign of Cooper and Morrison, parachutes, bodies, anything. They find nothing. The Germans are questioned after the war. Did they capture 2 American pilots in that area on November 10, 1944? No record, no prisoners matching those descriptions. Cooper and Morrison simply ceased to exist somewhere between when their crew bailed out and when their aircraft landed itself in Belgium. The B-17 itself is recovered, examined by Army Air Force engineers. They find nothing unusual. The aircraft is intact, systems functional, no signs of damage that would prevent normal operation. The fuel tanks are nearly dry, exactly what you'd expect after hours of flight. The autopilot is engaged, which explains how the aircraft maintained level flight. But the autopilot can't navigate, can't adjust for wind, can't line up with a field and execute a landing. That requires a pilot. December 1944. The official report is filed. Aircraft 4231563 was abandoned by crew following combat damage and direct orders from Formation Commander. Aircraft subsequently landed in Belgium through unknown means. Pilot First Lieutenant James Cooper and co-pilot Second Lieutenant Paul Morrison listed as missing in action, presumed killed. Circumstances of their disappearance remain under investigation. The report is classified, not because there's anything sensitive about the mission itself, but because nobody can explain what happened. And unexplainable events are embarrassing. They raise questions about competence, about reliability, about whether the military actually understands the equipment they're using. Better to classify it, file it away, move on. January 1945. Navels is reassigned to a different crew. He flies 6 more missions before the war ends. He never talks about what happened to Maggie's drawers. Nobody asks. The other survivors from that mission don't talk about it either. It's too strange, too uncomfortable. And in a war where thousands of men are dying every day, 2 missing pilots and 1 ghost aircraft don't rate much attention. The war ends. Records are archived. The incident is forgotten. Except by the men who were there. Robert Navels is 65 years old, retired, living in Missouri. A military historian researching B-17 operations contacts him, wants to interview him about his service. During the interview, Navels mentions the incident. The historian is fascinated, starts digging through archived records, finds the classified report, starts contacting other survivors. Tucker is still alive, Hayes is dead, but his family has letters he wrote. Chen survived the war, was repatriated, died in 1979. Through these interviews and documents, the historian pieces together more details and finds something nobody knew. Tucker, the flight engineer, told his family something before he died in 1982, something he never told military intelligence. He said that when he was helping Navels with his parachute, preparing to bail out, he saw Cooper and Morrison through the cockpit door. Morrison was slumped over, unconscious or dead. Shrapnel from one of the earlier fighter attacks had apparently hit him. Cooper was alone, trying to fly the aircraft with a severely wounded or dead co-pilot. Tucker didn't mention this during debriefing because he wasn't certain. It was chaotic. Maybe Morrison was just leaning forward. Maybe Tucker was wrong. But looking back years later, Tucker believed Morrison was already gone before the crew bailed out, which meant Cooper was flying alone with a dying co-pilot, trying to get his crew to safety. And after everyone bailed out, Cooper stayed with the aircraft.
Maybe trying to save it, maybe trying to save Morrison, maybe just refusing to abandon a flyable bomber. The historian finds something else. A Belgian resistance report from November 1944 never correlated with the B-17 incident. A resistance fighter named Julien Mercier reported seeing 2 parachutes descending near the village of Jodoigne, approximately 40 miles from where Navels and the others bailed out. The timing matches. The location is along the projected flight path of Maggie's drawers. Mercier tried to reach the parachutes, but German patrols were searching the area. He never found the pilots. The Germans never reported capturing anyone, which means Cooper and Morrison may have bailed out, landed in German-occupied territory, and been killed trying to evade, or captured and killed without records being filed, or died on landing. The historian can't prove any of this, but it's the most plausible explanation. Cooper stayed with the aircraft longer than ordered, got his crew to safety, then tried to fly the damaged bomber back to England alone with a dead co-pilot. When the fuel got too low, he set the autopilot, trimmed the aircraft for level flight, and bailed out. And the B-17, properly trimmed with autopilot engaged, continued flying for 24 minutes until the fuel ran out and the engines quit. And when the engines quit, the aircraft descended. And by pure chance, it was descending over flat Belgian farmland. And by even more incredible chance, it was pointed roughly into the wind. And when it touched down, the landing gear was still down from when Cooper had extended it before bailing out. So the aircraft landed, not because anyone was flying it, but because all the conditions happened to be right. Chance, luck, physics, the ghost fortress. Robert Navels dies at age 81. Before he dies, he gives an interview to a documentary filmmaker. He talks about the war, about the missions, and about Maggie's drawers. He says people want to believe it was supernatural, a ghost plane. But I think the real story is sadder and simpler. Cooper was a hell of a pilot. He stayed with that aircraft, trying to save it, trying to save Morrison. And when he finally had to jump, he made sure the aircraft was stable. Set it up to fly itself. And it did, for 24 minutes. Long enough to cross into friendly territory. Long enough to land in a field where it wouldn't hurt anyone. Cooper saved his crew, saved his aircraft, and then disappeared. We never found him, never got to thank him, never got to tell him that what he did was the bravest thing any of us saw in the war. He followed orders, got his crew out, but he didn't give up on the aircraft, didn't give up on Morrison. That's who Cooper was, and I think about him every day. The story of the Ghost Fortress raises uncomfortable questions about command decisions made under pressure. Captain Ward ordered Maggie's drawers to bail out. Was he right? Maybe. The aircraft was damaged, down to 2 engines, deep in enemy territory. Standard procedure said bail out, but Cooper thought they could make it. And if Cooper had disobeyed orders, stayed with the aircraft, he and Morrison might have made it back to England. Or they might have crashed, killed everyone aboard. Ward was following regulations. Cooper was following instinct. Both made reasonable decisions based on the information they had, but the outcome was tragic regardless. 2 men lost, not because of enemy action, but because of the impossible situation combat puts men in, forced to make life-or-death decisions with incomplete information and seconds to decide. The incident also reveals the chaos of aerial warfare, the confused targeting orders, the scattered formation, the breakdown in communication. These weren't failures of individual competence, they were systemic issues created by the fog of war. Too many aircraft, too many commanders, too much happening too fast. Ward wasn't a bad officer, he was overwhelmed, out of his depth, trying to lead a mission he wasn't prepared for. The system failed him, and that failure cascaded down to the crews under his command. This is why the incident was classified, not to hide misconduct, but to hide the uncomfortable truth that even well-trained, well-equipped militaries make mistakes, that systems break down, that good men die because of confusion and bad luck and impossible situations. These truths don't fit the narrative of military precision and competence, so they get filed away, buried, forgotten. But the men who were there remember. Navels remembered.
Tucker remembered. Hayes remembered. They carried the weight of what happened for the rest of their lives. They survived. Cooper and Morrison didn't. And that survival came with guilt. Should they have stayed with the aircraft? Should Cooper have disobeyed orders? Should someone have checked on Morrison earlier? These questions have no good answers. Only the cold fact that 2 men died and 8 men lived, and nobody can fully explain why. The Ghost Fortress landed itself. Physics and chance and Cooper's final setup of the controls created a miracle. But it was a miracle that saved an aircraft, not the men inside it. And that's the tragedy. That's the untold story. Not that a B-17 landed itself, but that the men who flew it, who fought to save it, who made impossible decisions under unimaginable pressure, were erased from history. Listed as missing, filed away, forgotten. Until now. This is their story. This is the truth that didn't make it into official reports. The Ghost Fortress flew because Jim Cooper was a hell of a pilot who refused to give up, who stayed too long trying to save his co-pilot, who set up his aircraft for one final flight, even as he jumped into enemy territory. That's not supernatural. That's courage. That's what soldiers do. They make impossible choices. They sacrifice themselves. They do the right thing even when orders and regulations and common sense say to do something else. Cooper saved his crew. And his aircraft flew on, empty but not abandoned, carrying the memory of what he'd done. And when it landed in that Belgian field, it was delivering a message that some men give everything, that some decisions are right even when they lead to tragedy, that courage doesn't always save you, but it matters anyway. Henri Dubois died in 1978. Before he died, he told his grandson about the day the Ghost Fortress landed in his field. He said it was the strangest and saddest thing he'd seen in the war. A beautiful aircraft landing perfectly with nobody inside. Like the plane itself was trying to get home, trying to complete the mission. And when he climbed inside and saw the empty cockpit, he said he felt the presence of the men who'd flown it, felt their determination, their sacrifice. He said that aircraft didn't land itself. The pilots landed it. They landed it. They just weren't there to see it touch down. Maybe he's right. Maybe Cooper's final actions, his careful trimming of the aircraft, his setup of the autopilot, his extension of the landing gear, maybe all of that was him landing the aircraft remotely. His final act as pilot, his final responsibility to his crew and his machine. And if that's true, then the Ghost Fortress isn't a mystery at all. It's a testament to skill, to courage, to the bond between pilot and aircraft, to the men who flew into hell and didn't all make it back. The B-17 that landed in Belgium was eventually scrapped, cut up for parts, metal recycled. No museum preserved it, no memorial marks where it landed. The field is still there, growing wheat as if nothing happened. But something did happen, something important, something that reveals the true cost of war. Not just the men who die, but the stories that are lost, the sacrifices that go unrecorded, the courage that gets filed away and forgotten. This is one of those stories. The account from Sergeant Navels, kept private for decades, finally told. The buried file unearthed, the truth about the Ghost Fortress. Not a supernatural mystery, but something more powerful. A story about men doing impossible things under impossible circumstances. About decisions made in seconds that echo for lifetimes. About the price of following orders and the cost of disobeying them. About how war creates situations where every choice leads to tragedy, and courage is measured not by success, but by the willingness to try anyway. Jim Cooper and Paul Morrison never came home. Their families received telegrams, missing in action, presumed dead. No bodies recovered, No graves, just names on a wall somewhere among thousands of others. But they deserve more than that. They deserve their story told. They deserve recognition for what they did, for staying too long, for trying too hard, for refusing to abandon hope even when hope was gone. That's what this episode is. Recognition, remembrance, the buried file brought to light, so that Cooper and Morrison aren't just names on a wall, but men who faced impossible choices and made them with courage and honor. Men who flew a ghost fortress home even though they couldn't be there to land it. Men who deserve to be remembered, not as a mystery, but as heroes. That's the real story of the Ghost Fortress. Not that it landed itself, but that the men who flew it were extraordinary enough to make the impossible seem almost routine. And that's worth remembering. That's worth telling. That's why these buried files matter. Because the truth, however uncomfortable, however tragic, however impossible, deserves to be known. This is Sergeant Dean's Buried Files, the stories they didn't want told. The truths that were classified and forgotten until now. Thank you for listening, and remember, the greatest mysteries aren't supernatural, they're human. The courage, the sacrifice, the decisions made in moments that define lifetimes. That's what haunts us, that's what we remember, that's what matters. The Ghost Fortress flew because men like Jim Cooper made it fly. And when we forget that, we lose more than history. We lose the lessons, the inspiration, the reminder of what humans are capable of when everything is on the line. Don't let that be forgotten. Share this story. Remember these men. Honor their sacrifice. That's how we keep the buried files from staying buried. That's how we make sure the truth survives.